Well, good afternoon, and welcome to the launch of the Smart Centres Index 3. And my name is Mike Wardle. I'm the Head of Indices and Director of ZN. And I'll be taking you through the Smart Centres Index results this afternoon. There is time at the end for questions from the audience. If you've used the GoToWebinar platform before, you'll know that you type the question into the question box in the dashboard to the side of the screen. But please do ask any questions you have at any point during the presentation. Just a little bit of background, I guess, in that ZN has been researching financial and commercial centres for a number of years with the Global Financial Centres Index, which started in 2007 and has been running every 6 months since then. The Global Green Finance Index, and most recently the Smart Centres Index, part of a range of work we do to track the development of financial and commercial centres across the world. And the Smart Centres Index is a factor assessment index. It combines perception data through a survey that we run, which is live all the time, with quantitative data taken from a wide range of sources. We use advanced statistical modeling to combine the people's assessments of centres with the quantitative data to give us the overall Smart Centres Index rating. By way of an overview of the index itself, the index is designed to look at technology and finance centres across the world in terms of their readiness and support for new technology applications. So we're interested in centres which are doing innovation, they're doing technology, they're doing science, and bringing those together in a commercial approach. The aim of the index is to help investors, governments, and regulators look at the attractiveness of technology centres for new products by measuring how attuned centres and their regulatory systems are to attracting innovation and growth. And we track three different measures, three different dimensions in the Smart Centres Index. First of all, innovation the support, the approach taken in a centre to regulation and support for the innovation and technology industry provided by the ecosystem in that centre. Second, creative intensity, which is the effectively the depth of work going on in the centre in relation to technology and innovation industries. And finally, delivery capability, the quality of work being undertaken in technology and innovation in that centre. The SCI now includes 67 centres in SCI 3, drawn mainly from Asia Pacific, North America and Western Europe, but increasingly seeing centres join from Eastern Europe, a couple from Latin America and the Caribbean, and from the Middle East and Africa. And I'll go through the regional dimensions later in this presentation. And so what are the headlines for SCI 3 published today? First of all, London regained its first position in the index, with New York falling to second place. It's only, of course, 3 editions in, and London and New York have been sharing the top 2 positions. But New York is now the only centre, US centre, in the top 10, with Stockholm and Dublin replacing Los Angeles and Chicago in the top 10. Oxford, Stockholm, Hong Kong and Cambridge have overtaken Singapore, which fell to 7th place. And a couple of key messages, I guess. First of all, that Asia Pacific centres generally score lower for innovation support. That includes regulation than they do for creative intensity and delivery capability. And only 2 centres rose 10 or more places in the rankings in SCI 3, whilst a number of centres, 19 centres, fell 10 or more places. This is mainly as new centres entered the index and entered at a higher ranking than existing centres. And this is a feature with new indices of this type, that as the number of centres we track increases, then the positioning jumps around. I mentioned that the SCI depends in part upon a survey asking people about individual places in the world. By sector, then you'll see from the chart that most people, 31% of those who answer the survey describe themselves as working in technology in some field or another. And a large number of others come from different areas of the finance industry and also professional services and the knowledge base at his universities, think tanks, etc. By region, the greatest number of respondents are from Western Europe. Asia Pacific is catching up fast, with 20% of the respondents in this edition of the SCI coming from Asia Pacific. Turning to the top 20 centres, you'll see that on the right-hand side, all the centres have increased their overall rating in the Smart Centres Index. And that's actually true throughout all the centres that feature in the index. We believe this reflects greater confidence in technology and innovation. People are ranking centres higher than they have done in previous editions. In terms of the ranking, I've mentioned already the top 10, with London and New York taking first and second places. Some interesting strengths coming through in terms of Swiss centres. Geneva, Zurich and Lugano all up in the top 20. And a lot of US centres feature in the top 20, even though they don't yet make it into the top 10. Including Seattle, which is a new entrant in this index, and of course has a deep connection with technology. And looking at the top 20 centres, we can also look at the aspects, those three aspects. I mentioned the three dimensions of innovation, support, creative intensity, and delivery capability. And you'll see that in the top centres, they have reasonably balanced strengths in all three of those dimensions. Slightly stronger in innovation support at the very top of the table compared with the other dimensions, but generally the leading centres are strong across all those aspects. Turning to Western Europe, the 7 centres in Western Europe feature in the SCI 3 top 10. I just want to mention in passing Oxford and Cambridge in the UK. We have been tracking those separately, but we recognise they are part of the Golden Triangle, as it's called, the grouping between London, Oxford and Cambridge in terms of technology development. And we'll keep an eye on how best to display the Golden Triangle in the Smart Centres Index moving forward. Other centres, as I've mentioned already, Swiss centres are strong. And going into the detail of the report, when you have the chance to read it, you'll see that Western European centres are comparatively strong in innovation support. So the regulatory systems and other support systems in place in Western Europe seem particularly strong. Turning to North America in the top 10, only New York features in the SCI 3 top 10. And also US centres are also stronger overall in innovation support than they are in creative intensity or delivery capability. But generally, as I said, the centres towards the top of the index are strong in all three of those dimensions. Moving to Asia Pacific, Hong Kong and Singapore make the top 10 and certainly are seen as having great strengths, particularly in human capital in relation to technology and innovation. Chinese centres generally are not scoring as high as we might expect in the SCI. Certainly in the innovation support dimension, they are generally scoring lower. And this is something which, again, we will continue to look at closely as we move forward. Seoul joins the index in this edition and enters at 32nd place, a good performance overall. In the Middle East and Africa, we've now got 6 centres featured in the index. Tel Aviv, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, all scoring very high, with other centres with a bit of way to catch up. But I think it shows that Middle East and African centres are starting to make their presence known, and certainly Tel Aviv and the 2 centres there in the United Arab Emirates are making enormous efforts to develop their technology and innovation infrastructure. We have 4 new entrants in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, joining Moscow, with Sofia and Budapest ranking higher than taking the first 2 places in this region. And again, we'll need to see how the new centres that enter the index fare in future editions. Our experience of this kind of longitudinal research is that there's a bit of settling down in the early stages, and they may therefore not maintain their positions. They may indeed improve them. And then 2 centres are featured from Latin America and the Caribbean, with Mexico City joining Cayman Islands. Cayman maintained its rank position and improved its rating, but just shows the competitiveness with new centres entering the index, that even though it had a strong improvement in its overall rating in the SCI, it maintained its rank rather than improving its rank. I'm going to talk a bit about the taxonomy of the quantitative measures that we use in the Smart Centres Index. So we divide the quantitative measures into 6 areas, looking at technology functions themselves, financial services, reputational issues, business environment, human capital, and infrastructure. And we are able to use those areas to run the index separately, just using the quantitative measures relating to each of those 6 areas. And that gives us a different range of rankings in the index for each of those areas. You'll see, interestingly, that although London comes number 1 in the index overall, in fact, New York takes the leading position in 5 out of the 6 areas there, with London taking the top place in financial sector development. What this means is that London will have scored strongly in those particular measures which are most closely correlated with the index results overall, but interesting nonetheless. And you'll see also that other centres have particular strengths in particular areas. For example, taking Lugano, which entered the index at 13th, but it is showing at 9th for infrastructure. Zurich again showing very well for infrastructure, and this enables us to track the strengths of particular cities as we look at the index overall. I'd just like to make a few observations on the index results. First of all, that talking to people who represent cities and centres, they consistently tell us that technology is a key issue for their development, not only in fintech but also across the commercial areas. The 4th industrial revolution is seen to be an area which it is worth investing in to make sure that you maintain a competitive advantage. So cities are exploring how best to exploit new technology, how to promote and regulate growth, how to attract skills and skilled workforce into their ecosystem. And I want to talk a bit about innovation approaches. The 2 things I've come across recently. First of all, the Chinese market is very much talking about ABCD. Really focusing on AI, big data, cloud computing, and distributed ledgers as the technologies which they believe are going to drive change across finance, but across all aspects of technology in the industry. And the Chinese are doing interesting things. I saw recently live feed of a system which uses satellite technology to match with AI, and identifies people on building sites who are not wearing their hard hats in real time, which enables the site supervisor to take action. So people are looking really far and wide about how technology can assist in all aspects of commercial life. Secondly, I came across a system which Huawei is using, the roads system. All of the products which Huawei wishes to develop are matched against this set of requirements. So they want systems which are real-time, on-demand, all online, do-it-yourself, and involve sharing information. And effectively, they use this as a methodology to look at innovation and new developments. And just wanted to share that with you as an insight into how people are taking things forward. And I guess the other thing that comes out of the index is looking at what are the economic strategies which are underpinning success. First of all, education, including advanced university institutions. Just about all of the leading centres in the index, in the Smart Centres Index, have world-leading STEM education available in their city. Second, regulation. We're finding that increasingly regulation is seen as a way to promote innovation, balancing economic, social, and institutional frameworks in a way which doesn't put too many barriers in the way of innovation, but at the same time provides sufficient protection to ensure that new entrants to the market and new commercial offerings are successful. Access to financial investment is seen as absolutely key. You need ways to support new business and R&D, and also to accelerate small businesses into medium and larger scale business. High-class infrastructure almost goes without saying. It's for a successful innovation city. There needs to be easy access to digital services and products, and that needs to be robust and fast. And finally, connectivity. Allowing collaboration between academic, commercial, and regulatory systems across different centres and across different jurisdictions to support the flow of ideas and products. So increasingly, we see successful centres building partnerships at academic level and at commercial level between cities and between regulatory systems. And to sum up, I guess if I were talking to a city who are asking, what strategies they need to adopt for success in technology and innovation, these are the 6 areas that really need to be in place. Obviously, you need skills, whether that's making it an attractive place for people to come and live and work, or whether it is supporting higher education. You need a policy and regulatory framework in place which allows for innovation. You need infrastructure. You need a collaboration culture which allows people to spark off each other and to develop creative ideas. And you need a lifestyle offering which is attractive for people to come work and enjoy themselves outside work as well. So if I were advising a centre, I would say that all these 6 elements are those which come out of the Smart Centres Index as important to developing innovation and technology centres for the future. So please do go and find the Smart Centres Index. It's available through our website as usual, and of course do get in touch if you have any questions on that. But we have time now for some questions from the audience, and I will just arrange those now. So the first question I have is from Bob McDowell, who's asking about the existence of universities with a high degree of research reputation being a major contributor to the rankings. I've already mentioned that, and I can dig some figures out on this maybe for you, Bob, another time. All the leading centres in the index have institutions who are ranked in the top 20 in the key disciplines of maths, engineering, and science. So there seems to be a direct link between having world-class higher education institutions focusing on STEM subjects and the development of smart centres and the technology offerings that they're able to bring to market. And this is important, we think, for 2 reasons. First of all, the supply of skilled people into the workforce, but secondly, the whole issue of innovation. Research institutions in universities are always asking new questions, or even asking questions to which there isn't really an answer, to take forward thinking and to innovate in a creative way. And we think that is one of the reasons that this is an important area for development. Do keep your questions coming. We'd love to hear from you. But I have another question on whether the ranking of Asia Pacific centers, and in particular Chinese centers. We are surprised, I have to say, that Chinese centers don't feature higher in the index at this moment. A couple of reasons that might be driving that. First of all, remembering the range of respondents to the SCI questionnaire, currently a large number of response to the questionnaire are for Western Europe, and those people may not rate Chinese centers as highly as others might. And so we'll be looking carefully to see the balance of respondents to the questionnaire over time, and whether that changes in favor of Asia Pacific centers. The second reason is that, in particular, Chinese centers don't score as high for innovation support. So there's something about the regulatory systems in China, which at the moment are not seen to be supporting innovation as much as they might. As I say, we're surprised that Chinese centers don't feature a little higher in the index, given what we know of the developments in China. But for the moment, that is the data that we have. So I've got another question, which is to do with US centers, and I think the preponderance of US centers in the top 20, but not yet in the top 10, I think shows in particular the strength of the US in relation to education, innovation, and investment in R&D. The US centers are seen to have a very strong regulatory system, but in particular very strong innovation, bringing new products to market, and particularly in the development of digital systems. One of the fact we've all been Zooming over the last year is because someone innovated some years ago to develop video conferencing across the world, and it's no accident that happened in California. So I think the approach of Silicon Valley, but also other centers in America, is really key to understanding why American centers are doing well. So at the moment, I don't have other questions coming in. Do please send a question in if you would like to. Yes, another question from Bob McDowell. I suppose how much do regulators recognize the importance of their contribution? And I'm not sure is the honest answer. Certainly, regulators that I have spoken to about the regulation of new technology see the importance of financial regulation and business regulation, as it were, to protect consumers, but also to ensure that there is a route to market for innovative products. This is particularly true in Fintech. In relation to other parts of the regulatory system, as yet, I think regulators aren't really focused yet on how to use the regulatory systems to support innovation. And we hope, of course, that the Smart Centres Index helps them to see that they do have a role in relation to this development. And at the moment, I don't have any other questions in. So I just say to you, please do go to investigate the Smart Centres Index on our website. I hope you'll find it a good read and of use. And we look forward to developing the Smart Centres Index 4, which will be published in November of this year. If you haven't taken the survey, the details are up on screen at the moment, and we'll remind you in the follow-up email that we send. But please do take a look at the Smart Centres Index survey and get involved in rating centres that you know, and getting involved in taking the Smart Centres Index forward. Many thanks to you all for your attendance, and please do get in touch if you have any follow-up questions. We'd be delighted to share that with you. But so thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon. I'll give you a few minutes back in your diaries, and thank you very much for coming along. Thank you.